Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back everyone at the Budapest Eurasia Forum 2023 conference. Earlier today, we had discussions on economics, and our next panel on multilateral cooperation will focus on the role of ESG principles and guidelines in the operation of multilateral development banks and financial institutions. Sustainability and green finance are handled with high importance within the Magyar Nemzeti Bank. In 2021, first among European central banks, the Magyar Nemzeti Bank acquired the green mandate, which is instrumental for transforming our economy into a sustainable one. Please let me now invite you to watch a short video about the WWF-approved Habitat Restoration Project, which was founded with the goal of compensating the CO2 impact resulting from our operation, including the footprint of this conference.
The MNB proudly announces the carbon neutrality of all its conferences, and as all of them, this is also a carbon-free event. With reforestation towards a greener financial system, 50,000 trees herald the central bank's green transition, and this number will increase in every year. The Hungarian Central Bank was among the first in Europe to receive an environmental sustainability mandate as one of its core tasks. Magyar Nemzeti Bank promotes the green transition of the financial system through incentive programs, recommendations, analyses, and discussion papers. The Hungarian Central Bank intends to set an example for Hungarian financial institutions by reducing and neutralizing its own carbon footprint. In line with this objective, the MNB offsets its carbon emissions caused by its own operation by financing habitat restoration projects every year. The MNB implemented a smaller pilot project in Pápateszér as a start. Then, in 2022, it financed a reforestation project the size of almost 40 football fields in Gest in order to offset the impact of emissions from its own operations. The central bank is committed to maintaining this practice in the future.
Dear all, before we move on to the next panel, it is my greatest pleasure to announce this year's International Green Finance Lifetime Achievement Scientific Award launched by the Magyar Nemzeti Bank, the Central Bank of Hungary. May I call Mr. Csaba Kandrács, Deputy Governor of the Magyar Nemzeti Bank, to the stage to share his remarks on this occasion. Deputy Governor Kandrács, welcome. The floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished guests, as the first European Central Bank to obtain a green mandate, the Hungarian Central Bank continues its effort to shift Hungary's financial system and, as a result, the entire economy to a climate-friendly path. We apply a diverse toolkit for greening our economy, but all these steps necessitate scientific measurements and proof for the novel initiatives. Since green finance is a very young area of academic research in the world and in Hungary as well, we felt responsibility to incentivize the researchers' society. Henceforward, with the launch of the Green Finance Science Award and the Green Finance Science Research Initiative in 2021, our aim was to encourage academic capacity building beyond green finance by supporting the researchers and motivating scholars to find new ways enhancing sustainability. This year, the International Green Finance Lifetime Achievement Award ceremony takes place in the context of the Budapest Eurasia Forum, as the green finance is an area with strong Eurasian link and synergies. Therefore, unlike in the previous years, this year the award will be presented at this forum, while the Hungarian winners received their awards as the regular Green Finance Conference in October 2023. The International Green Finance Lifetime Achievement Award is presented to each year to an international excellence who have contributed to the development of the scientific study and implementation of green finance in sustainable management through international relevance, globally significant and pioneering research. In recognition of big breakthrough achievements and transformative career in the field of green finance, the first Lifetime Achievement Award was given to Naoyuki Yoshino, Professor Emeritus and at Keio University, Tokyo. And last year, the award went to Sean Kidney, co-founding CEO of the Climate Bonds Initiative and professor at the Center of Sustainable Finance at SOAS University of London. And now, I kindly invite our host today to announce this year's winner.
Thank you, Mr. Kondracs, for your wonderful opening remarks. And now I would like to announce this year's awardee is Dr. Mátyún, founder and president of Institute of Finance and Sustainability, a globally renowned policy advocate and effective practitioner for green and sustainable finance. He led the drafting of China's green finance guidelines and its first green bond taxonomy during 2015 and 16. He initiated and facilitated a range of global consensuses on scaling up green finance under the G20 framework between 2016 and 2022. He initiated and led the drafting of the Green Investment Principles for the Belt and Road in 2018. He also initiated the idea and then co-led the effort to develop the Common Ground taxonomy under the International Platform for Sustainable Finance between 2019 and 2023. Now, let me invite Dr. Mátyún to receive the Green Finance Lifetime Achievement Scientific Award, then continue with the fireside chat session of the Multilateral Cooperation session.
So, Dr. Ma, again, congratulations. But you see that now we should have work a little bit more to warm up a little bit the next panel. And I think this panel would be quite interesting. Multilateralism and green ideas, I think these are very exciting topics nowadays. And if we look back, or we are looking and experiencing the year 2023, we have to say that this is a quite extraordinary year, though it seems that the whole decade would be quite extraordinary. But if we concentrate on the 2023, we can judge and we can feel that it's also true. Let me give you a couple of arguments why I think that this is true. First, that this is the hottest year globally, since records have begun around 80 years ago, and most probably the hottest in as many as the 120,000 years since the Homo sapiens have started its journey to conquer the whole globe. We can feel that the global average air temperature is hotter, will be, it seems, plus 1.4% Celsius. And if we compare to the pre-industrial average, and there were articles nowadays that we reached a couple of days the 2+ Celsius degree, which is enormous high. And also alarm bells are ringing for scientists because not only air temperature, but the ocean heat and the Antarctic sea ice record are smashed with huge margin, and we seem to be in uncharted territory. Some fears that the worst case scenarios are unfolding, and we also experienced, unfortunately, this year that, for instance, in Libya, where there was a port city of Derna, and it was hit by a devastating flood, causing more than 10,000 deceased or missing people. Also, it's not only just the climate change, but 2023 is also a special year because we are a halfway point of the 15-year-long agenda, 2030 period, because in 2015, nations of the world agreed to 17 sustainable development goals with 169 targets to make the world a better place by the end of this decade. And with little more than 7 years remaining, only 12% of goals and targets are on track. So it seems that we are lagging behind. And also at the same time with that, 2023, we've seen sticky inflation. We also see geopolitical tension culminate, creating headwinds to climate action and sustainable transition. It's enough that we see that the war between Russia and Ukraine, and now the war in Israel, it's going. Concerns are mounting that high debt spikes and possible global economies recession could throw the transition, of course. So all in all, what we see that it seems that we badly need a huge turnaround. We need to change this course somehow. So my question is that with less than a week left from the next United Nations climate conference held this year in Dubai, what sort of optimism can you convey to our audience? Do you believe that in the Paris Agreement and its COP conferences as the prime example of multilateralism will be able to deliver? And I know this is not a very easy first question.
Thank you very much, Deputy Governor. I should also say that it's my great honor and pleasure to receive this very prestigious award from Central Bank of Hungary. Back to your question regarding where we can find optimism despite all the challenges you mentioned in terms of geopolitics, inflation, rising temperature, and so on. I'd like to follow what Professor Bai was saying, just giving a few examples on the green economy in China. And let's sense where we can actually derive some optimism. The Chinese EV industry, which Professor Bai has just mentioned, is now covering 30% of new sales in the auto industry, so 30% penetration ratio, which is a target the government set for 2030. That means that we are 7 years ahead of the EV penetration target. And according to some estimates, the Chinese renewable installation will reach 1,200 gigawatt by 2025, 5 years ahead of the target. The target used to be set by 2030. And give you one more example on green finance, which is a field that I've been working on for the last 10 years. We started setting up the green finance policy framework in 2016, and now it's just 7-8 years. And China has now developed the largest green lending market with outstanding green loans at 27 trillion RMB, which is about $4 trillion US. And where this money went to, it went to support the largest renewable energy industry, largest EV industry, largest battery industry, the largest high-speed railway industry. So this growth is still continuing at very high speed. Last year, our green loans were growing at 38%. And this year, year to date, it's 36%. Hopefully, these numbers will give you some optimism. And internationally, we just had a US-China dialogue, which I think improves a little bit in different areas, especially on the climate side. And I feel that this dialogue can contribute to a few areas of global consensus. One is on the tripling of renewable targets by 2030. I think both China and US have stated very clearly just a couple of days ago that they are supportive. I think it will be helpful. And also, both China and US have agreed on specific efforts for emission reduction and also generating new momentum for CCUS. Now, one more thing back to our green finance field is the G20 Small Finance Working Group, which I used to co-chair, and now it's taken over by my colleague, Wang Xing. And last year, when I was still co-chairing that group, we produced the G20 Transition Finance Framework, which I think is a very important document that will guide the transition finance work in many jurisdictions. And in China, we actually had an experiment already in a couple of regions. For example, Chongqing municipality and Huzhou municipality has came up, according to the G20 framework, transition taxonomy, transition policy incentives, and transition projects. So these things are already taking place on the ground in China. And we feel that the transition finance, which will mobilize private sector capital for carbon-intensive industry to decarbonize, will probably involve a larger amount of capital than the pure green finance, which is for renewable energy and electric vehicle going forward.
Thank you very much. And yeah, we touched, and this is what I would like to follow the race, the competition. Because in parallel to the fight against climate change and the biodiversity problems and the other sustainability challenges, what we see that there is an unfolding green technology competition as well. You mentioned, and we also experiencing that China has dominated the manufacturing and the rollout of technologies such as the solar panels and the battery manufacturing, but still there are many more new technologies like the heat pumps, the hydrogen producing electrolyzers, and so on. And also, we see that the EU, the US, Japan, South Korea, are all joining the global green race. What we see that the EU relies more on market-based solutions, such as the carbon pricing to keep pace with the technology rates. It uses the EU ETS, and in a couple of years from now, the ETS 2. So every big regional player trying to find different kind of tools. So my question is, what do you think about this race, and what do you think about these policy tools like the state subsidies or the carbon pricing? Mandates, regulations, or other tools? What do you think that what are the most effective to get ahead in the race? And can the global cooperation and the technology competition coexist?
I think many European colleagues are saying carbon market should be the most important mechanism for driving decarbonization, which is probably true in Europe, given your political and economic setting up. But in many other countries, as we discussed in the G20 and other forums, they believe that we need to go for a combination of policy tools and reflecting local conditions, which is very complex. So in China, I think this is one of the examples. We use the carbon markets. We have a national compulsory market. We are just relaunching the voluntary carbon market, but we also have the government setting targets for specific industries, for example, renewables, high-speed railways, and so on and so forth. And the government do give incentive to certain industries. For example, they used to subsidize EV consumers, which is now declining and coming to zero because the industry is good enough. And they do subsidize rooftop solar for some time. And now it's also coming down as well. And on the finance side, we had the Central Bank of China, which offers cheap financing for specific green projects in the renewables and CCUS industries and so on. So it's not just a single policy, really reflecting the convenience of using certain policy. Sometimes one ministry is actually more aggressive and more willing to come up with things to drive resource allocation towards green. Then they can use it more. And now back to your earlier question on global collaboration in the green areas. I do support this view that collaboration, free trade for green goods and technologies is eventually very good for the global agenda for decarbonization, because we need collaboration to develop these green technology faster and cheaper. Otherwise, if everybody's doing this in silo, we can still achieve it, but it's going to take longer and it will be more costly.
Yeah, we touched the multilateralism, the race, or the competition, and let's go towards the money. Because we all know that tackling the climate change or the climate crisis, as well as solving other sustainability issues, the largest question is the money. There are many kind of estimates about the investment, what it needs. The most recently, the IEA last month said that the global clean energy spending needs to rise to $4.5 trillion US dollar annually by the end of 2030 from the 1.8 trillion in 2023. So it needs to 3 times higher, and we are talking about trillion dollars. And we also have taxonomies, sustainability disclosure standards, and green instruments such as the green bonds and the green loans. So my question is that we have already the right set of tools and to help to close the gap, the investment gap, and it's enough, or we need further tools to complement the existing ones. And what do you think? Why it's not? It seems a little bit that that the investment gap is not narrowing. What would be the reason of that?
I think green investments are growing, but the estimated demand for green investments are growing even faster. And the number you cited, like 4.5 trillion globally, is actually quite low relative to my own estimates. I estimated that China alone will need $2 trillion US per year for green investing. So globally, I think we probably need something like 7-8 trillion per year. And now what I want to highlight is that green finance is not just one or two financial products, green loans and green bonds. It must be an ecosystem. And that's what we did within China when we drafted the green finance policy guidelines back in 2016. We had what I call 4 pillars into this big document that involved 7 different ministries co-working on this document. The number 1 is taxonomy. We need to clearly define what green activities we're talking about. Otherwise, we'll end up with greenwashing. Secondly, we need to have a disclosure requirements initially for really the issuers, the borrowers, to disclose the environmental benefits to the lenders and investors. And now we're moving towards ISSB-based disclosure system. And the third pillar is the financial instruments. As I said, we need many, many of them: green loans, green bonds, green insurance, green equity, ETF, ABS, and so on, to meet different demands from the real economy. And finally, we need some policy incentive for a certain period of time, because many green projects initially are not making enough money to attract private sector money, and we need to sort of induce them to come in and giving the project a projected high return which means that some incentive from fiscal, from monetary, from sectoral regulation will be needed to enhance the projected future return. Thereby, we can invite more participation by the private sector. And one key bottleneck, in addition to the lack of this ecosystem in many places, is the lack of capacity. Because whatever you do on the 4 pillars, taxonomy, disclosure, instruments, and policy, is very complex. It's not that easy. And that's why I think the G20 is now calling for strengthened global efforts for capacity building, especially for developing countries. And myself is actually about to launch a new capacity building initiative during the COP in 1 week time. It's called Capacity Building Alliance for Sustainable Investment.
Wow, that's very interesting. My last question, and this is, I try to grab the opportunity to give a coming soon minutes, a little bit of advertisement, because you wrote a recommendation for the Central Banks of Hungary's upcoming book on sustainable GDP. And this book highlights that a new sustainable approach of economic growth is needed, not only as a renewal of thinking, but also in the way of how we measure economic development, because GDP is the most widespread indicator of economic development, but it doesn't take, for instance, into account the sustainability at all. So my question is, how do you see it? Do we need new measures for sustainable economic growth beyond GDP? And if the answer is yes, in what terms should it differ from the current GDP methodology?
No, first of all, congratulations on publishing the Sustainable GDP book, which I think is very important in sort of changing the mindset of many policymakers, especially local government officials, in evaluating their own performance. The traditional GDP has a problem, which is it does not take into account the externality of many, for example, polluting and carbon-intensive activities, which generates negative activity, right, to the rest of the world. And also, it doesn't take into account the positive externality of those reducing carbon. And therefore, this traditional GDP is distorted in evaluating the actual economic performance in a sustainable way for local officials, for companies, and for many economic agents. That's why I think some sort of a sustainable GDP measure is needed. Now, the tricky thing is how do you apply it? Now, once you have the externality incorporated in the GDP, adjusted, you call adjusted GDP. And are you going to use this to replace GDP? I think probably not. You can use it in parallel. Historically, the traditional GDP can still be used, and on the second column, show them the sustainable GDP. See whether this local government should be subtracted by doing the wrong thing and should be added some points by doing the right thing, which is very similar to the rating company now doing credit rating and ESG rating in parallel.
Yeah, thank you very much again, Mr. Ma. I think we touched a lot of quite interesting topics, and I'm pretty sure that the panel, during the panel, our distinguished guests would have more time to talk about a little bit in a deeper way. So again, congratulations, thank you very much, and I hope that we could warm up a little bit the audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kondracs and Mr. Ma, for the outstanding discussion. It was a valuable experience to hear your thoughts about the importance of multilateral cooperation and sustainability. Now, after this brilliant fireside chat discussion, it is time for us to move to the panel discussion of this session. The panel is titled "The Role of ESG Principles and Guidelines in the Operation of Multilateral Development Banks and Financial Institutions."